Welcome to the midweek edition of Daba Markets Talk, where we break down the stories shaping African markets and explain what they mean for investors. Let's begin with good news. The BRVM advanced again this week, and the gains were broadly shared. 31 stocks closed higher, compared with 15 that declined and only one that remained unchanged. The BRVM composite rose 1.21% to close at 484.32 points. The BRVM 30 gained 1.33%, reaching 230.73 points. The BRVM Prestige advanced 1.18% to 177.10 points. The BRVM Principal delivered the strongest index performance, rising 1.52% to 368.38 points. The message is clear. All the major indexes moved higher together. Investor confidence was therefore not limited to only 2 or 3 large companies. More than 7,560,000 shares changed hands during the week. That was a 4.68% increase from the previous week. However, the total value of transactions fell 36.36% to approximately 7.69 billion CFA francs. In other words, investors traded more shares, but the average value of each transaction was lower. The stock market's total capitalization rose 1.21% to more than 18.66 trillion CFA francs. Let's now examine the week's top stocks. BICICI Benin delivered the strongest performance. Its share price jumped 20.87% to 7,615 CFA francs. The rally was supported by strong first-quarter results. Net banking income, which represents the revenue generated from the bank's main activities, increased 35%. Net profit rose 48%. This means that the share price increase was supported by a genuine improvement in the company's financial performance. However, after such a rapid rally, investors should also examine the company's valuation and avoid buying simply because the price is rising. BICICI Benin is expected to pay a net dividend of 254.6 CFA francs per share on July 31st. Because the share price has risen sharply, its dividend yield has fallen to approximately 3.34%. When a stock's price rises, without a corresponding increase in its dividend, the dividend yield declines. Safca Côte d'Ivoire delivered the second-best performance, gaining 10.59% to close at 4,750 CFA francs. The increase came as the market awaited the first trading session for the new shares issued following the company's capital increase. Ecobank Transnational Incorporated, or ETI, completed the top 3. The stock advanced 7.35% to 73 CFA francs. ETI was also the market's most active stock, with approximately 1.10 billion CFA francs in transactions. That represented more than 14% of the total value traded during the week. Société Générale, Côte d'Ivoire, and Sonatel were also among the most actively traded companies, reinforcing their status as liquid stocks that regularly attract investor interest. Among the week's decliners, Setao Côte d'Ivoire fell 8.79%. The movement appeared to be mainly driven by profit-taking. Profit-taking happens when investors sell shares after a strong increase to secure some of their gains. BRVM Côte d'Ivoire declined 6.25%, while Total Energies Marketing Senegal fell 6.13%. Another important development involved BICICI. The National Investment Bank of Côte d'Ivoire plans to sell its 21.09% stake in BICICI to Brandon and McCain Capital, subject to regulatory approval. Once the transaction is completed, Brandon and McCain Capital would own 40.20% of the bank. For investors, a significant ownership change can affect corporate governance, business strategy, and future dividend decisions. BICICI enters this transition with strong financial results. Its net profit reached 36.5 billion CFA francs in 2025, representing an increase of 39%. On the bond market, total capitalization declined slightly by 0.88% to approximately 13.1 trillion CFA francs. A total of 217,844 bonds were traded, with a combined value of approximately 2.14 billion CFA francs. Trading was heavily concentrated in Senegal's 7-year government bond carrying a 6.75% coupon. A total of 100,000 bonds changed hands on this line, representing approximately 999.5 million CFA francs. This single bond accounted for almost 46% of total bond trading volume and nearly 47% of the market's total transaction value. A heavily traded bond is generally easier to sell. However, liquidity alone is not enough. Investors must also compare its price, coupon, maturity, and yield to maturity. Yield to maturity is the estimated annual return an investor could earn by holding the bond until it is fully repaid. In regional news, the Central Bank of Nigeria maintained its benchmark interest rate at 26.5%. This was the second consecutive meeting at which the rate remained unchanged, following a 50 basis point reduction earlier in 2026. Nigeria's annual inflation rate eased slightly from 15.93% in May to 15.91% in June. However, the central bank remains cautious because higher global energy prices could create renewed inflationary pressure. Why does this matter for investors? High interest rates generally support returns on fixed income investments and may help stabilize the currency. However, they also keep borrowing costs high for businesses and households. Markets will now monitor inflation and foreign exchange stability to determine whether further interest rate reductions become possible later in 2026. Another major regional development was the political endorsement of the Nigeria-Morocco Gas Pipeline by West African leaders. The $25 billion project is expected to cover approximately 6,800 kilometers, cross 13 West African countries, and eventually connect with the gas network linking Morocco to Europe. The pipeline could transport as much as 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually. Approximately half of that volume could serve Morocco and European markets. For West Africa, the project could improve access to energy, support infrastructure development, and create new export routes for gas from Nigeria, Senegal, and Mauritania. Potential investment opportunities may extend beyond the energy industry to construction, logistics, banking, insurance, telecommunications, and industrial services. However, this remains a very large and complex project. Its timeline will depend on financing, government agreements, regulatory approvals, and a final investment decision. Turning to dividends, 34 of the 47 companies listed on the BRVM are expected to distribute dividends in 2026. The estimated average dividend yield is 4.59%. Several payments have already been completed, including those from BC, ETI, Chorus Bank, Onatel, Orange Côte d'Ivoire, Ecobank Côte d'Ivoire, and Sonatel. Additional confirmed payments are expected from companies including CIE, Solibra, BIC, SIB, LNB Benin, and SOGB. Download the Daba app to access the complete dividend calendar, including payment dates, dividend amounts, and estimated yields. For the week ahead, the data points to potential opportunities across banking, telecommunications, consumer businesses, and industrial companies. Without revealing the stocks reserved for Daba Pro subscribers, some shares have estimated upside potential ranging from approximately 5.5% to almost 17%. Other stocks carry an estimated downside risk ranging from approximately 17% to 24%. On the bond market, observed yields to maturity range from approximately 7.3% to 10.9%. Investors should compare those yields with the maturity, liquidity, and credit quality of each issuer. To learn how to conduct these analyses yourself, discover Daba Academy. You will learn how the stock market works, how to analyze a company, how to evaluate dividends, and how to build a disciplined investment strategy. A special promotion is currently available. Use the code PODCAST when registering to receive a 3,000 XOF discount. To receive detailed weekly recommendations, exclusive research, deeper market data, and reduced investment fees, subscribe to Daba Pro. With Daba Pro, you do not simply follow the markets, you stay ahead of them. This was your weekly market recap on Daba Markets Talk, the podcast from Daba Finance. I am your markets editor, always connected to the pulse of African markets. Until next time, stay curious and stay invested.